And we are recording on Monday, April 22nd, 2024 at 12:06 p.m. Eastern Time. And I think I fucked it up last time. I'm gonna fuck it up this time. Jean Marie Auret, if I got it correct.
You
Don't
didn't.
I
You did it
didn't?
correctly.
Oh, I
Yeah, you
did?
did. You did not mess it up. You got
Fuck
it
yeah,
correct.
let's go. All right, let's wrap this shit up, guys. Thanks for watching. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please go into the description. Please go find your book, Screens in the Ego. That is still in the description. I think it's only a 4 or 5 hour Audible book. It's very good. And the second best compliment I can give someone is having them on the show. The best compliment I can give you is inviting you back because it is enjoyable. And also, guys, please go in the description. Please go to Frank's speech. That's Mike Lindell's, the My Pillow guy. That's his video platform. They are sponsoring the podcast as well as Gold Genesis Group, 1-800-200-GOLD. If I can sound like a total snake oil salesman, buy some gold and to support the podcast. But really support those that support the podcast because it's free. But today we're going to talk about bad therapy, which, other than I would imagine the obvious name, what exactly is that?
Yeah, so it's a general concept. It's also a book that was recently written by Abigail Schreier. So I was thinking that we could talk about the points that she says and then kind of connect it to, various things that I've observed, you've observed in life, and we can go from there.
All right. So, I mean, bad therapy in that it's just because you did talk about in your last book, I think you talked about like the suicide attempt of, I know they were all like amalgamated characters, obviously for privacy reasons, but it was the chick that essentially would always attempt suicide with a, not like she was, in a state of duress and didn't know what to take, but it was like clearly not even close to a threshold dose of it'd be like if I tried to kill myself with a 6 pack of beer, right? It'd be like, dude, I mean,
Right, exactly.
if you try to kill yourself with like 3 liters of vodka and it didn't work, I'd be like, you might have actually been trying. But
Mhm.
that's like me knocking back a couple tall boys and being like, this is the end. And it was always in a somewhat public, it was somewhere where she had roommates or there was a high traffic area. And you kind of then extrapolated that to therapy. You're like, how much of it is you're trying to get better versus you want some sort of validation, or at even like a deeper level, you want some sort of nannying or some sort of, the love you didn't get from a parent or something. So is that kind of anywhere in the realm of what bad therapy is, or have I just completely missed?
Right, right. So that's the main thing that I talk about in my book because that was close to like personal relationships and experiences that I had had in the past where exactly um, someone would take a couple too many pills in a public place and then get rushed to the hospital and get treated for suicide. And the critique of it is not that this person was not in a state of emotional
Sure.
duress, but that every time she got rushed to the hospital, the doctors would believe her and treat it as an earnest suicide and not um, really acknowledge the facts of the case as they are. And it was almost like this happened like 6, 7 times, right? So, so, it, so the doctors like had a will, like they purposely wouldn't just acknowledge what was happening, what everyone could see was happening. And at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on because I was still in an environment that just trusted doctors and believed doctors, despite the fact that they had been really terrible in terms of my own childhood. And I I hadn't yet developed the vocabulary to criticize iatrogenesis, which is where doctors make a patient worse. And
What's
there's
the
a lot
term?
of iatrogenesis.
Iatrogenesis. I'd never heard of that, but yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
it's a thing that Abigail Schreier talks about in her book. She starts her first chapter is just making the argument that it is theoretically possible for a doctor to take a patient and make them worse. They don't
Sure.
always make it better, right?
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
So once you get to that point, then you say, okay, like how often does that happen in psychology? Because unlike a medical procedure like a surgery, the doctor has to go through and talk to you about the risks of going on, whatever, doing a medical procedure, a medical intervention. But when you sign up for therapy, there are almost never any disclosures about how therapy can make your psychological state worse.
Mhm.
And that's a really big deal in therapy. Like they don't have to disclose the unsuccessful patients that they've had. They don't have to disclose like the risk of inducing rumination as opposed to helping you shut down the intrusive thoughts that are, causing you anxiety and depression. Um, so yeah, that's one of the main things that she talks about is that yeah, let me just bring up the summary. So the first thing is that there's not really like a codified standard for what a therapist has to disclose before you start therapy. And then another thing is that uh, one of the only professional standards that therapists used to have was that you weren't allowed to treat patients that you had like any connection with
Mhm.
socially or outside of work, right? So you were never supposed to treat like a friend of a friend, or if you knew someone, you weren't supposed to treat their daughter, anything like that. But now with the rise of therapy in schools and school counselors who are not held to the same standard as psychiatrists and psychologists, um, basically performing therapy, we've completely ruptured the relationship between like patient-client confidentiality because school counselors are performing therapy for kids. Teachers are being encouraged to do social emotional learning, which is basically where a person who's completely untrained in therapy whatsoever conducts group therapy in the classroom. And it's like really bad and has resulted in a lot of instances of hysteria that she talks about
That's
in
like
her books.
handing me a rifle and saying, "Hey, the president's coming to your city. Will you lead up security?"
Right.
What?
Right.
Or-
You just,
No. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, but then not saying that and instead of going, "Yeah, no, I'll do it. I'll do it with impressionable kids who have no idea that this isn't the norm and that I don't even know is not the norm."
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, one, like treating a person that generally has bipolar disorder is a very difficult thing to do. Dealing with someone who has a pathological sickness is extremely difficult. Um, and it's often not very rewarding. The patients can get really bad. They can ignore you. It can get like whatever, like violent, and you don't get good results, right?
Hmm.
So, so in every way, a therapist has an economic and
They have an
work
incentive.
incentive,
You're
right,
It's what
to
it is.
ignore, right, exactly, they have an incentive to ignore the patients that really have a pathological sickness and keep the mildest patients in therapy for the longest amount of time.
Hmm.
And that's not to say that every therapist, obviously, like I think the vast majority of therapists are good people who want to help, and they're doing what they know how to do. However, that doesn't change the fact that the economic structure does incentivize people to stay in therapy for as long as possible. And if you can give a girl who's, 14 to 16 years old, who's like having, social anxiety, uh, session every week, and her parents dole out $250 every week for you to just talk to her about relatively normal teenage issues. Now you have a steady income. Now you have a patient whose parents are like functional enough to pay you. Sometimes a person with bipolar disorder is not going to be functional enough to hold down a job. They might
Yeah.
not actually be able to pay you. So in that way, psychology has really just completely like latched on to the upper class,
Mm.
and it's become a feature of uh, of society that can afford to get these medical treatments and interventions, and has created in many circumstances a dependency and long-term reliance on therapy.
Mm. So you can see it as a service. Like, yeah, yeah, get a 12 to 16-year-old girl. It's like, or boy who's like what, going through puberty. Yeah, yeah, no, the horrors of high school, right? It's like looking back, it's like, would I redo college? Probably that was fun. When I do high school? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely not. Like, no,
LOL.
it's all dog. It's horrifying. And again, that doesn't mean that there aren't legitimate issues. But even as, let's say you are a psychologist or psychiatrist, and let's say you do have the best, let's say you're not a demon from hell. Let's say you actually have the best of intentions. You might be seeing someone and sure it's the recurring income. Even if you don't truly believe they need help, part of you might say like, who am I to judge? Or if you are seeing them weekly and that thought even crosses your mind, you might be, it's not that you're, if you every once in a while, I'll give, $5, $10 to the guy in the corner. And I'm like, I know he's going to get heroin. I know he's going to drink, but whatever. I mean, whatever. He's going to do it. What do I care? And, but you don't even have that. Imagine if I wasn't doing that. What if I was giving him like a Gatorade and like a protein bar? I'd be like, I wouldn't feel any way about it. I'd be like, he's building muscle and he's hydrated. Like, now, what if you're a
Yeah.
therapist? You'd be like, what's the worst that's really happening? I'm not bankrupting this person. Their parents are writing the check.
Hmm.
What do I? And so now it turns into you're not consciously being a demon, but at the same time, you're kind of passively like, no harm, no foul kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's the way that a lot of well-intentioned therapists justify seeing patients who maybe are not the exact demographic that needs their help the most. But if therapy is conducted badly, it can have really serious effects on people. And the way that that happens is really by using a Freudian approach to helping people understand their own internal lives. What I mean by that is before Freud, across cultures and throughout time, people would say things like, hey, don't dwell on the past because the past cannot be changed. That was in the Tao Te Ching, that's in Buddhist and Hindu philosophy, it's also in the Abrahamic faiths. Don't dwell on the past. Stay focused on the present, work for the future. Psychotherapy came along, and the entire philosophy drives people to reflect on their early childhood experiences. And it's not that the logic of psychotherapy is not true, because it's probably true that a lot of your like behaviors resemble the way that your mom acted when you were a little kid or something. Like what that's not, it's not that that's untrue, it's that it's ultimately not helpful,
No.
right? Like if you spend maybe it's helpful if you're trying to discover yourself a little bit, but the degree to which that adults in therapy, not even kids, adults in therapy go and then they like trace back every single dysfunctional relationship or bad habit that they have to their parents. One makes it really difficult to continue to like have a relationship with your
To love
parents
your
as an
parents.
adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
You
now you've
fucked
spent,
me. You're like, what?
right, exactly. You've spent all of this time like talking to a therapist about why your parents messed you up. And it doesn't give you a clear path forward about how to resolve these issues. And excessive rumination is a really serious problem.
Yes.
Um, the idea of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a therapy designed for people who come in with with a specific and with a specific disorder, right? So I've read the entire, I think it was David Burns' cognitive behavioral therapy book. I read it entirely, and one of the anecdotes that I remember was a man who had some sort of muscle disorder where his hand would shake all the time. He was super, super scared of anyone noticing that his hand would shake. He wouldn't drink water because he didn't want to pick up the glass. He like built his entire life around making sure that no one would notice that his hand shook because he was so embarrassed at the flaw. So the therapist told him, drive one state over and go into a store and say to the cashier, as you're swiping the card, oh, there goes my shaky hand again. My hand's shaking. And then watch that person's reaction. And so he did it. And the cashier
Like,
completely
no
did not
worries.
care. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like
At best, no worries. Normally, it's just like, huh? I don't. They're like,
right,
take out their headphones. They're
right.
like, what? Like,
Right. Exactly, exactly. So once the man realized how completely indifferent the cashier was to this problem, he felt a tremendous amount of relief because he was like, hey, actually no one cares about this as much, right? So the issue was that he had all of these thoughts like spinning in his head. The issue was the rumination and not the actual condition of his life, right? And the therapist wasn't able to make his hand stop shaking, but they were able to help him understand that it's truly not a big deal. And if you are in therapy with someone who agrees with you, affirms your emotions, or says you're talking about how you're angry at your husband or your mom, and they say, "Oh my goodness, that person sounds so toxic." Maybe maybe that person actually is toxic, in which case you might have to take steps to impose healthy boundaries or whatever. But if the therapist is indiscriminately agreeing with you, then that's not going to help you come to a greater understanding with one of the most intimate relationships in your life. And it can make you feel justified in continuing in your own, from your own perspective, such that it breaks your relationships. And that's actually a really big thing in therapy, is that adults who are in therapy a lot, often, well, not often, I don't think that there's a statistic on it, but there's a trend of people who get that emotional support from their therapist, not needing to rely on their family, will distance themselves from their family or completely cut them off. And that's not good for anybody, because now how are you going to talk to someone? Well, now you have to pay someone to talk to
Hmm.
them, to talk about your own feelings, because you don't have those basic familial connections that used to be the, backbone of civilization and emotional health.
It's like the meme where it's like, you know, the girl's talking to her side man, and it's like like, well, baby, I can't believe he was mad at you for lighting this car on fire. Like, that's horrible. Like, why don't you come over? And it's like he's gonna say anything. Like, well, you put his cat in an oven, and now he's mad at you. Like, you deserve better than that, honey. Like, I mean, yeah, it's what, like, that it is what you're going for, and yeah, it can. But again, I think it comes down to the whole, if someone's aware that they're doing damaging things to you, like, you're dealing fentanyl, there's like a 8% chance that the logic of what you're doing will maybe break through the financial incentive or like the moral callous you've built up to be like, dude, I'm killing people. Like, I should probably stop. Like, at some point you're gonna like get too high or take a hit of acid, or your friend's mom's gonna die, and you're gonna be like, all right, this is, I probably, even though it's hardened, guys, but I'm gonna be like, this is maybe not good, right? But if you're just like, you know, I've got the white coat, I'm the doctor, I'm helping the person. And not only that, you might not even be thinking that much. You might be like, one patient in, I got three before it, and I got five after. Like, that'd be like asking, like, do I ruminate on episode 941? I'd be like, I don't even know what that was. I can roughly give you an estimate. It was like 2022. I have no idea. Like, it's on to the next. And so you kind of have this, and even the patient might be like, yeah, I kind of just like laying it all off on this therapist. And the parents are like, I'm taking care of the kid. And the kid's like, my parents are taking care of me. And the therapist is like, the parents are taking care of the kid, and I'm helping the. And it's just this kind of, and again, not that all therapies benefited me greatly. I loved the therapist I had after my brother died, because I remember the first time I met her, she said, our work will be done when you never have to see me again. And I was like, awesome. And as it went on, she got to the point where it was like, hey, let's start seeing each other less frequently. I was like, oh, and in hindsight, I'm like, that's a therapist that actually gave half a shit. But if there is
Yeah,
none of that,
having a definitive
yeah,
end date. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, 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 no. I was
Yeah,
gonna say, if you don't have that, it's gonna just be this sort of, well, I'm helping, they're helping, I'm helping, you're helping, I'm helping, and just on forever.
right, exactly. It's a vortex where like no one thinks that they're a bad actor, but ultimately the culture that we created does incentivize rumination, and does weaken family ties if it's done incorrectly.
Hmm.
And a therapist who says, "Okay, we're going to talk, and then treatment is going to be terminated when you are healed, and it's going to stop." That's a sign of a good therapist. That's a sign of someone who wants you to heal and then move on with your life, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of therapy, a lot of therapists don't do that. And that is a problem. It's also you know, in general, especially for a child, it's also bad to label um, like normal things as disorders, right? Like this has
Hey, you
become
have
a
no
trend.
idea. Yeah.
Right.
You're like, why am I
Right.
so angry all of a sudden? In hindsight, you're like, yeah, I was going through puberty. Of course, I just was randomly like, so it's why emo music's the thing, right? It's
Right.
like,
Right. Exactly. Exactly. just like putting labels onto people really does affect the way that they understand themselves, and it also can give them an excuse for their behavior that they ultimately could control, right? So like if someone has depression and they don't clean their bedroom or something, or that whatever, it's like, okay, by what incentive could you, like if I gave you $1 million, would you be able to clean your room? Yeah, you would be able to do that, right? If if you said to someone like, hey, someone with cancer, like, hey, can um I'll give you $1 million if you stop having cancer, right? Like that person wouldn't be able to do anything because the cancer is just always there, right? So there's a degree of agency and control that you can exert over uh, your own mental health issues, right? And that degree changes across, the severity of the mental health issue. But sometimes people are so depressed that physically they would be like, if you actually had $1 million, they would be like, I can't do it. I'm so
Yeah,
like so
you're
not able
gone.
to
Yeah.
function, right? But most of the time you can, right? And so the the act of putting a label on a person um, takes away their ability to feel like they have agency over the problem. And often people do have agency to solve their problems, and they can solve it through being oriented towards their work. I think that she talked
Mhm.
a little bit about that. Being oriented towards your action, being like, okay, I'm just gonna like do this next thing. And it's, maybe my depression doesn't go away, but at least like I won't have, you know, dog hair all over my bed or
Dirty
something.
laundry. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, so the act of labeling is itself a problem, and a lot of people are just coming up with really stupid labels now. Abigail Schreier was talking about how kids who miss their friends over the summer are diagnosed with summer anxiety,
Jesus Christ.
or right. So that's one of the examples of something that's really silly and excessive and
And I don't even mean to say Jesus Christ in like a dismissive way, because I vividly remember, and kind of like the being a teenager and being angsty and then looking back and going, yeah, we had no reference point. You just all of a sudden you went from like happy go lucky kid with 4 brain cells to like, being all angsty and emo. And only with time can you look back and go like, oh yeah, that was like a hormonal stage. That was weird. That was awkward. I mean, I can look back to like the months following after my brother passed, and I remember like I don't think I didn't start seeing a therapist for years after that, but right after, some doctor or something, I got like the label of being depressed or something, and I vividly remember the feeling of like it was after college, after like doing well in school, and I just remember the feeling of saying like, oh well, I'm depressed. I vividly remember like sitting at the computer at my parents' house when they were then living in Maryland. It was like a weight being lifted, but not in like a good way of getting it off your chest. It was all like it's like the third day of being homesick from school and you're kind of not sick anymore, but it's just enough. Your mom's like, all right, you like kind of gives you like the look like, all right, you little fucker, but you have one more day left. Like my mom's a nurse, right? It's like you haven't thrown up, you haven't shit yourself, but you can have one more. And like you kind of know mom doesn't you makes your other brothers do the chores, and like Tom's sick, and like you both know it's kind of dog shit, but you're kind of guilty, kind of gleeful. I remember it was like that feeling. It was like a shirking of well, I'm depressed. And I vividly remember that. And I look back at that now and again had no reference point, and it was very confusing with losing a sibling and everything. But it's been 10 years now, and I look back at it and I go, that was actually I would think the beginning of things spiraling downwards, of
Mhm.
being like, oh well, I'm depressed, and then it falls to, well, I'm anxious, and then it's like, well, you don't know what it's like to lose and then it's just on and on and on and on and on, just down to the pits of hell.
Right, right, exactly. And honestly, it takes a lot of courage to be able to talk about the complexity of getting that diagnosis and then feeling a sense of relief from it.
Was I vividly
Because,
remember it? It was like
right. Because you didn't feel it at the time. I remember you telling me that the first thought in your head after you found out about his suicide was, okay, I can't commit suicide. Like
Yeah.
the first thought was, my parents cannot go through a second suicide. So whatever happens to me in my entire life, I'm not going to
I just
commit
have to stay
suicide.
alive. Yeah.
I have to stay alive. Exactly. And that's an action-oriented response, a crisis-oriented response.
A
Um,
positive one.
and
I cannot fucking, I can slow down, but I can't completely
right.
collapse.
Right, right. And then you started to slow down a little bit more, and
Mhm.
then like what you said, from your own admission, um,
I'm
there was a
depressed.
moment that
Yeah.
you got depression and
Mhm.
that you were diagnosed with depression, and then you felt a sense of like
Not my
relief
fault.
from
Not
having
my
the
fault. I
diagnosis.
can't, guys. I can't. I can't help you. I can't.
Right,
It's like, is there a doctor on board? Like, no, I'm in first class, so I can't help you. I can't help you.
right.
I'm depressed. Don't worry about it. I'm depressed. Yeah, no, it was, and
Yeah.
it was, yeah. And looking back on it, I mean, I haven't really fully explored that, but I've thought about it over the years.
Mm,
And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was like a survival instinct or some shit, or if it's just being lazy. But I do remember it was just like I can't, almost like I can't be bothered.
mhm,
And like me and my two brothers, like we all had a period of dipping down,
mhm,
but they both bounced back. They both
mhm.
went on with their lives, and it was like I just kept going downwards, and it was just I just kept going back to the well of like it's like when they put the mice in the cage and they've ever seen the studies where they put cocaine in the water and they're like, let's see how long until the mice like cut themselves off. They never cut themselves. They hit the lever until the skin wears off their fingers. Give me the
Right,
coke, give me the coke. I
right.
think I was just punching the coke bottle. I was just like, no, I'm depressed. No, I'm depressed. To the point where it did come down to like, oh shit, there is like nowhere else to go.
Yeah, yeah. So the phrase that Abigail Schreier uses, that was section 4 of bad therapy. No, section 3. Make happiness a goal, but reward emotional suffering. That like obviously like a suicide is a much more extreme example than a lot of what we're talking about in terms of like the way that schools are implementing therapeutic ideas and making little kids and teenagers interact with therapy. But ultimately, a lot of people, in the name of trying to be nice, have rewarded emotional suffering. I remember that happened in ninth grade. I was in a program called Rising Scholars, which was supposed to like um, be for kids who are of low socioeconomic status or kids who are minorities who needed to be like imbued with the values of
Just such like
kids who were college bound, right?
such a backhanded insult.
It
You're
was, it was a
you're
very
bright
backhanded
and you're
insult.
destined for shit, so we're gonna help you. And you're like, eat a dick. Like,
Right. Yeah, I don't even know why I was part of that program, but I was, and the idea was that kids needed a little bit of extra support, and honestly, the kids who were most successful in the program did get a lot of exemptions from, like their professors and counselors would write them exemptions all the time, and then like they wouldn't do the work, right? They wouldn't do the work, and they kind of created the administrators in the school created a culture where the kids were rewarded for emotional suffering in the name of being nice.
mm,
And I also remember we would do these activities where we would talk about like our home life or like sit in a circle. And like once a kid started sharing something really vulnerable, there was an incentive to like have a story of um, equal like
one-upmanship.
right, exactly. Like, oh, I want to fit in. Um, I remember really like I had never really hated the way that I looked, but I actively remember like feeling embarrassed about the fact that like my dad was white. I had never like I had never like felt weird at all about race, but my first and I had also never consciously made a judgment about someone based on their race because
Mm.
a lot of the kids in my elementary school who were minority were like the most brilliant because there were a lot of like I don't know, there were a lot of Nigerian kids in my school. There were a lot of kids who were like first generation immigrants. So the stereotypes about like racial disparities weren't actually present in like my grade and my interaction. So The reason that I'm telling you that is because the first time that I was conscious of race relations was when I was in ninth grade in that program where we were sharing trauma, and I felt actively embarrassed about the fact that my dad was white. And technically, Arabs are also white, so my mom is also white, and I felt terrible shame for that. I felt terrible shame for being born white, and I desperately wanted to like come out. The girl next to me, who was Egyptian, claimed to be African American because technically Egypt is in Africa. So this wasn't something that I was making up. Like there was a culture where suddenly you were not supposed to be of a certain identity, and we felt super embarrassed that we were associated with whiteness or whatever it is. And I felt really bad for the kids who were just completely white the because the guy who led the program used to go on tirades about how good it is to like how much he hates white people basically, and he was allowed to just go off in class
It's
like
so
that
fucking
all
wild how that also does produce the very idea that they're claiming to fight against, which is like Nazi master race. Because you're getting
yeah,
everyone to basically, well, I'm darker than you, so I'm really fucked. Like you're all kind of in a weird way just saying like that blonde-haired, blue-eye guy, like
right.
he's the one. Like what?
Right, exactly. It was really crappy. And also like a lot of kids who were white needed help. A lot of kids it's just everything about it was really stupid. But what I remember was that the way that they were conducting what is tantamount to group therapy. And like let's just take a moment to realize how incredibly messed up it is that a teacher with no training whatsoever was like, "Hey everybody, let's get into a group and share our personal traumas, okay? Let's go. Let's think about a trauma that you've had and then share it with the rest. You know that kid who makes fun of you at lunch all the time? That's the guy who you're going to tell your deepest secrets to in our class together. Let's
Just let
go.
it
Let's
rip.
go
Just
around."
let it rip. That kid
Right,
that wants you dead.
right,
Let him know what parts of you hate the most.
right,
Give
exactly.
him that enriched uranium. Give that terrorist
Right.
group the nuclear weapon.
I know. It's so sad. It's so sad. And it's a thing that actually is surprisingly common in the social emotional learning curriculum. I was in school in Ann Arbor, and that was like on the cutting edge of progressive ideology. So I definitely empathize with like what is now a very common curriculum across schools, where teachers are doing group therapy circles all the time. Um, and Abigail Schreier talks about an example that a teacher told her about in an interview, in which everyone was doing their like check-in, which was their version of this. And one boy talked about how he was really angry at his dad um, for getting remarried to a woman he didn't like. And when he started talking about it, uh, all of the other girls in the class also started getting realizing how upset they were about their own parents' divorces. And then the teacher like suddenly had like five middle schoolers like sobbing in the middle of his classroom because he allowed the entire group to ruminate on, you know, what is apparently a common experience about divorce. And then he was like, okay, well, now you have to take your history
All
test.
right, well, go learn about Otto von Bismarck
Right.
and what led
Yeah.
and the powder keg of
Right.
Europe.
Right.
It's like that like, my mom's a nurse, and like I mean to this day, I'll be like, I'm kind of feeling this, I want to look up the symptoms, and she'll be like, do not, because I'll be like, oh my God, like I have a blister on the top of my foot. That is stage 4 brain cancer. Like, because right,
Right.
because that's where it leads to. And then imagine doing that. And what you're saying to go back, I meant to say this about all like the ninth graders. When I had my like depression alleviation moment, I was 23 going on 24. In ninth grade, I was 15. I mean, you're not a child, but at the same time, if someone gives you like an off ramp to like get out of schoolwork, if I took it at 24, almost 24, yeah, I would take it at 15 too. If somebody was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, you're white and you're under 6 foot and I don't know, you sunburn easily. So do you want to go to algebra?" I'd be like, "No, you're right. I really don't." Like, right? And it kind of is the not to be it is the adult's fault, right? It is at a certain, there's a gray area to where it's like, okay, well, now you're an adult and you need to shut the fuck up. But yeah, if you gave me an out to like not do work, yeah, I would. If I took it at 24, why wouldn't I take it at 15?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in a social environment that rewards emotional pain,
Yeah,
then you have an incentive to create emotional pain.
you
You
just
do.
can't. You're just hitting the coke water.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the things that really concerns me about the increase of um accommodations for people who have really dysfunctional behaviors because who have dysfunctional behaviors and aren't like considered like accountable for them, because then you're not one caring about the victims of their dysfunctional behaviors, and you're in really exacerbating their own issues. And that's the thing that we're really trying to stop. Like, if I could give like one thing to my daughter, I'm currently pregnant, and if I could give one thing to her, it would be to be a happy and healthy person, right? But even saying like I want her to be happy is kind of an unreachable thing because nobody stays in a state of joy for long periods of time. What I really mean is I want her to be able to roll with the punches of life in a way that
Hmm.
doesn't reduce her. Okay. Like, I don't want her to be reduced by the negative experiences that she comes across. And if you are excessively if you're in a situation where someone incentivizes that reduction, where someone allows you um, to be rewarded for being emotionally broken, then why wouldn't you be emotionally broken?
Mm.
So,
It's if it's the path of least resistance, then yeah. And I guess I don't know. I always knew something was like super fucked when I would get like quiet because I never shut up. Like whenever I would notice myself getting quiet, that's when I would shoot up the metaphorical flare. That's when I'd like text my little brother, I'd be like, hey, I gotta come over today, or like, even 10 years ago, be like, mom, like I gotta move home because it was if I still and I would say this like absolute value, -5, +5. The absolute value is still 5 units, even when it was awful heartbreak and pain, it was still something like on the Richter scale of being a human. When it all just kind of went away, to be like, I didn't feel anything thinking about my brother, and I didn't feel anything thinking about sex with my then girlfriend. It was just grayscale, placid, like noon on a cloudy day where there's really no sense of time. That is that you need help then. And if you can see that in someone, that's they're going towards the edge of the waterfall. That's suicide. That's what happened with my brother. There was no, oh, woe is me, you'll miss me when I'm gone. It was just kind of you look back at it and there was no there was no telltale sign. There's nothing.
right,
That's when you need help.
you feel alive when you're in a state of anger, but
Yes, it's
you
something. It's
right,
like
it's something, but
I'll
you
yeah.
feel completely um you almost feel dead when you're indifferent to life.
There's I do to fund the podcast because I'm nothing more than like tent carnival gypsy monkey slapping together symbols to make money for a living. I do the locals videos, which are just daily videos on locals. Sometimes it's talking about upcoming guests, other times it's just me like walking around the apartment. And I remember somebody was like earlier this year, like right before I ended up going to the psych ward for a week and a half, was she was like, you were no longer like walking around your apartment like screaming. Like she's like in the morning you'd like put your blinds up, and if they wouldn't work, you'd be like, what the fucking god? And she'd be like, there was still like a pulse, right? Or like close the drawer and like a sock is stuck in it. I'd be like, you fucking cocks, like. And I would always be like, no, those are like negative emotions. And it's like, no, those are emotions versus if it wasn't like the blinds didn't go up, it'd be like just kind of like that's and it's hard to do that because if you are like a conscious human or a parent, I'm not a parent, but at what point where do you draw the line of like they really need help and they need tough love, right? because that was I think I've told you I don't and like I was like in an argument like the last time I saw my brother, and I thought I was helping him. I thought I was giving him tough love because for so long I thought that I was accommodating him. In hindsight, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was like a monkey in a chemistry lab. But like the last time we spoke was like a week before he took his life, and I remember thinking to myself, it was like a big thing because for like what felt like, I don't know, like maybe 2 years, I was like really trying to help. And I just remember at one point thinking, like, I have to like do the difficult thing. And I was like proud of myself. I was like, I'm gonna just, I'm gonna give him tough love. And then that's the last time I ever talked to him. So like clearly I was unequivocally, inarguably wrong. That's very difficult because when do you get someone actual help? Because it's easy to like roll our eyes and be like,
Mm.
I'm a gender fluid fox. You're like, no, you're not. You're unemployed. Versus like, I'm giving tough love. Now they're dead. And you're like, well, fuck. Like that, that's inarguable. Like you were wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overstep my understanding of you, but if I
No,
was
dude,
in,
you're
okay,
good. I talk about all this
yeah,
shit nonstop. No,
yeah.
you're good.
So, I mean, it would make sense that if the last argument that you had with your brother was giving, was telling him like, you need to stop this, you need to stop this right now, and then he commits suicide, that you would feel consumed by a tremendous amount of guilt,
Yeah.
and you would set up the rest of your life to not,
Repeat
you
it.
know, not repeat it. And that would make sense why you would want to take refuge in these ideas of like therapy
Mm-hmm.
and the ideas of like really soft compassion when someone is in emotional distress, and be accommodating. It That does make sense. And um I don't I don't know exactly what you said to him, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that um if someone is in a state where they're genuinely thinking about killing themselves, um, honestly, you could have said anything and they
Yeah.
probably would have done the same thing.
Yeah. In
Um,
hindsight, I don't think anything was knowing what
and
I know now, knowing about his other conversations with my brothers and parents. I now look back and can rationally say, yeah, that it was nothing. I mean,
right, exactly. If he had conversations with a lot of people in his life, right?
yeah.
So it's not true that the only thing or the last thing, the last interaction was with you, right? Um, and yeah, so this is also going to sound really harsh, but
No,
I mean it in an empowering way.
not at all.
Um,
And by the way, and
right.
I don't mean to like narcissistically like pull this conversation into like my experience. It's just whether it's, like I told you beforehand, like what I love reading about like nuclear war because I'm a normal, stable human being. This is just like how I like relate shit. I don't mean to in any way make this like a woe is me. I'm trying to talk about it as like objectively as possible.
No, no, it makes sense that if we're talking about therapy, you would talk about your own
Sure.
psychological experiences. Yeah, so I think that in history, um, I don't think that families would have felt the same level of responsibility for someone committing suicide. I
Probably not.
know that in um, my great grandma's family, someone jumped off a building at one point. And I don't think that any of her sisters felt as if they were the ones who caused her to do that.
No.
And I don't really have a fully like fleshed out thought on this, but um, I would say that with the rise of treating mental health issues as something that is medical, we have really universalized the idea that they are preventable. And
Mhm.
sometimes they are not preventable. Sometimes someone is at a complete break, and it's not up to us, and it's not up to the people around them to save them from themselves. Um, and uh, like I told you before, uh, suicide is treated with compassion, whereas murder is treated with, hostility and punishment.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that suicide is a form of
It's a firm,
murder.
yeah,
Like
no,
it,
it's the
right?
me and my brothers have even, we've all
Yeah.
had the mixed emotions of like, we've joked about like, if John came back, what would you do right now? I'm like, well, ironically, I would kill him.
Right.
I'd be
Right.
like, you mother,
Right.
I'd give him a hug and then I'd be like, you motherfucker.
Right.
But
Exactly.
it is what it is. It's like the meme about Hitler.
Right.
He's Hitler, but he also killed Hitler, right?
Right.
So it's like,
Right.
but it is the same thing. And you talked about that. When you and I spoke offline, it was like,
Hmm.
how do you square that away, right? Because if it's just
Right.
a death, I think you said like if it was just a car crash, it'd be like, man, that meant, he was a good guy,
Right.
but then he did it, and you're all of a sudden you're like, well, how do I? Because if it hurts, clearly you miss him, and if you
Hmm.
miss him, then who made him go away? Well, it's him.
Right. Right. You have to
Where do
deal with
you
the root.
square yourself on that circle?
Yeah. Exactly. I think you have to deal with the reverberating levels of sickness that he was both murdered and a murderer. I think
Yeah,
that's what I said.
yeah,
Um,
it's dividing by zero. It
mhm.
rips you. It's a hard thought exercise, let alone when it's also like I have like pictures of me and my little brothers as like little toddlers. It's harder
Mhm.
when it's like and that's one of them. Where it's not one
Mhm.
just like for today's exercise we're gonna think about this. It's like no, you can't even think about it like objectively, right? And
Mhm.
to touch on what you said about the family member that jumped off the bridge, and I don't think it's cold or harsh at all to think about. I mean, the same, it's like people used to have 10 kids because 8 of them would die. And it's like
Mhm.
that's just reality, and in many of the same ways that, we can it's on one hand, it's like you want to move towards, ever advanced societies where it's less toiling in the field. It's like the quote, it's like how many Da Vinci's have toiled in obscurity in a potato field versus creating whatever's going to change the world. What if Einstein was poor and was just in a textile mill versus changing the world?
Mhm.
In that same, it's like we do want to move towards that, right? You want to alleviate pain, you want to extend lifespan, you want to decrease violence and war and rape and robbery. On the other hand, as you move away from all of the toils of like the animal in the field, you also have limitless time to think about things. And yeah, man. I mean, there is like a bliss to working a 12-hour shift and then just going to bed. You're not like, well, what was it like that I wasn't allowed to go to sleepovers until sixth grade? You're just like, I gotta fucking deliver this
Oh
Chinese
wow.
food. I gotta pay rent. Like, I still want to kind of buy some weed, but like, I also need gas in my car. There is like a bliss to just working until you're exhausted. So I don't think it's harsh at all to say, like, yeah, back in the day, these things all did exist. But a lot of it was probably like, man, I'm kind of sad. Fuck, I gotta work. Like I have a ninth baby coming, right? I don't really know where I'm going with that thought, but
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that you can really see that in the levels of depression that the levels of depression so that they talked about in pre-revolutionary France, because that's a society that had a tremendous, like, if you were upper class, then you had pretty much everything that you needed, right? You were living in like Louis the 15th, before the revolution, right? You were living in the Sun Kings. I think that was Louis the 14th, right?
well, he still had a
You,
head. Yeah.
right, exactly. Well, he still had a head. He could have anything that he wanted, right? So his experience was very similar to modern day experiences, and the fact that he had all the food that he wanted to eat, and he could whatever he imagined, if whatever type of coat he wanted, whatever he wanted to do, he could do it. And then at the same time, there were masses of people who were living in that animalistic stage of life where they were just like doing work from the moment that they could walk, and
Mm,
then just like they were having that like classic female experience where the woman like gives birth at 14 and then gives
died, like dies.
right. Exactly, that type of experience. And they knew about the difference between their mental state and the French aristocracy's mental state, and they came up with this idea called ennui, which was like a weird sense of depression that only the upper class felt. um, and it was a depression, right? It was the fact that these people who were withdrawn from the harsh realities of life still had this impulse to feel sad. right? And it's kind of a misdirected impulse, but it's a very real impulse to feel sad. And when you can't like attribute that to an immediate physical reality, you will attribute it to something because the impulse to feel sad is within us, right? And I think that if not Dostoevsky, another Russian artist once said that humanity loves misery,
Mm.
and that the moment that the revolution occurred, like, or no, not the revolution. Dostoevsky was before that. I don't know. There's some guy like humanity loves misery. The point is that um like what you are describing is something that a lot of people have described before, and it's this idea that as you get farther away from the pain of reality, you enter into this weird psychological space that still has pain. It's
Mm.
just misdirected. And the entire our entire society has moved into that psychological space very recently. And I and it's difficult because a lot of people don't know how to direct their own emotional pain. A lot of people feel very real emotional pain and they don't have any reason to blame it on.
Mm. And then there's a and I don't even know if, you know, I might look one day look back at this very conversation we're having the same way I look back at like puberty Tommy, or like the I'm depressed, you know, right after my brother died Tommy. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll look back at this and be like, oh, you man, you have no idea like the trip to hell you're going down right now. I have no idea. But part of me has tried to accept more and more that some things just are. And the way I'll phrase it, I think I said it to my little brother last fall. We were having a discussion. Is like Reese's cups. I love Reese's cups. I love peanut butter, chocolate, sugar. Like fuck off. Like it's screw heroin. You can go in and be like, well, the reason for this is it's rich in, you know, mono unsaturated fats and, you know, sugars, and, you know, triglycerides have 2.5 times as many calories per gram of whatever. And being as you're a biological organism, this follows the laws of entropy. You can dial it down and be like, and then you know, your tongue, you have these different taste buds, and, you know, these are circuited to your brain, and this dopamine, and the dopamine goes in the synaptic gap, and you can draw it all out. No number of research papers will ever get to the core in the same way. If I was just like, hey, fuck all of that, fight this, and you're like, what is that? I'd be like, that's a Reese's cup. You'd be like, fucking right. Like, all right, I get this, right? That doesn't make the experience of it any less, and it doesn't make the rational explanation of it any more moot. And I now have, and I'm in the midst of it, which is why, who knows, maybe one day I look back and say like, oh, this is terrible, or maybe it's great. I just know that I love to get up, immediately go to the gym, shower, meditate, do one, two, or three podcasts, do a little busy work at the end of the day. And I like to just be constantly crushed for time and always improve the resolution of the camera, the sound panels, the microphone quality, the advertisers, the, you know, whatever, the thumbnails, the, you know, the number of impressions per whatever it is. And then I reach those goals, and then I set a new one. And I don't ever truly believe that like X goal is going to be where I'm happy. I know I'm not, but I like the process of the struggle. So it's like, I know I don't need the Reese's cup. I know I'm not starving. But if once a week I can have a Reese's cup, which I do on Thursdays, it's my cheat day. I have some Reese's cups. I diet all week, and then I eat the Reese's cup. And I know I'm never going to truly be like, and now I'm satisfied, and, you know, and now I'm enlightened. I know that. And as soon as it's gone, I'm like, fuck, 7 more days to the next Reese's cup. But it's less painful than just dwelling on it eternally. And it makes life more enjoyable. And I I'm okay with kind of just writing it off as, and the reason for that is it's the human condition, the end. So like, I like being busy with like a little bit of free time at the end of the day, just enough that I can enjoy it, but I don't overdose on it to where I'm just sitting there and I'm like, how come I'm not happy? What's going on? And I know it's not fixing it, but I don't think there is fixing it. I think it's I think as like a biological organism, I enjoy accomplishing goals. To a degree, I enjoy the struggle. And I know that I don't know why that is. And I'm really only in like the last year or so, I'm okay with. I don't like, how come I like working, but when I'm working, I don't like. Now I'm just like, yeah, none of it fucking makes any sense, but it's less painful and I don't hurt anyone. So go with it. That's kind of like where I am now. Not that you
Yeah.
asked.
No. I think that's you described your method of creating mindfulness in your life.
Hmm.
And you are mindful in the sense that you have a routine and you're in the moment when you enjoy foods that you like, and you are not focused on what happened in the past, or you're working on something that will create a future that you're interested in, but you're most focused on the present. And then your idea about you like the struggle of life, and you can't really fix the sadness. I think that both of those things are accepting reality for what it is.
Hmm.
And I think that is a very healthy mental state to be in. So
Hmm.
congratulations. That's fantastic. A lot of life's pain is not fixable. It's true. And if you don't have, a specific thing to attribute your pain to, a lot of people still feel pain and anxiety, and they
Hmm.
don't know why. And that's probably one of the reasons that we've universalized the idea of anxiety and depression,
Hmm.
because people are still feeling these feelings and they don't have any immediate reason to feel that, or they have to go really deep into their childhood to attribute their, bad behaviors to traumas in the past or something, because they need to have an explanation for why they have such a dark side of themselves. And the answer, like you said, is that the the darkness just is part of the reality that we have. And then on the other side of the reality, there's Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. But it's like right now, and I'm totally just making this up and projecting it on you. You might, be nostalgic for being a kid, Christmas or Thanksgiving or, you know, just that kind of pain-free world. And then you might be nostalgic for high school, like your first love or something, or like kind of the rush of college to be like living out on your own. One day you will be looking back at this, be like, man, like I wish I could just like raise that baby again. I wish I could just see that. You'll still love them for an adult, but you're like, I just wish that I missed that little bit. And right now you're like, I love this child, but like I also have morning sickness, and I'm kind of one day you're like, I would imagine to a degree you're probably like, I fucking can't wait till I'm not throwing up every morning anymore, right? 30 years from now, 40 years from now, you'll be like, I'd give anything to be pregnant again. And it's like, so is any part of life really, and can you ever enjoy it, or is everything in contrast to that which is past and that which is coming? And yes and no. It's like, except now that you probably wish you weren't here, and one day you'll wish you were here. And you don't have to figure out why. You don't have to, you can break down reality down to string theory and quarks, and the only real way to tell the passage of time is the dissipation of heat, which is Carlo Rovelli. So you can get down to the bottom of it, and it's still just like, yeah, at a certain point, you do kind of just have to like throw like the stack of equations out and be like, yeah, I don't fucking know, man. Like, I don't, whatever. This blanket's warm. Like, it's just what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, exactly. And that's really bringing this back to the idea of bad therapy. That's something that therapy is lying to people about, right? The idea that you can have a happy life free from suffering is just not true.
It's
You
total
won't
horseshit.
be it exactly. A therapist at best is someone who can help you roll with the punches of life, or not be reduced by the negative experiences that you face, but ultimately, like, there's no situation where you're not going to have to go through a, whatever challenges you go through, like, everyone goes through them, right? And really having the expectation that life is easy, or that a therapist can deliver you from the pain of negative experiences, is itself a mental sickness.
Mhm.
Um, and if you are able to, I don't know, not accept it, because you don't want to accept, things, unjust things happen to people, unjust things happen to me, unjust things happen to you. But not being reduced by them might be the function of a therapist.
Mm.
Delivering a person from sadness is not something that a therapist could ever do.
No, no one can do.
Yeah.
The only way to do that is to like overdose on an opioid. And that's like a fleeting moment of like,
Exactly. And
and
that's
even that,
why,
yeah, and even then it's like, well, there is a debt to that. Now your loved ones miss you, right?
right.
Yeah, I think,
Right, exactly. And that's why so many senior care facilities give people high doses of morphine. They
Jesus.
let them die. Well, I mean, if I had to die, that's the way I would want to
Oh,
go.
sure. No, on the way out. Yeah. No, it's just like,
On the way out.
fuck. I don't know.
But yeah, there's no as you go through life, you have to go in with the expectation that there will be great difficulties.
Yes.
Um, and uh yeah, just developing a sense of self beyond the way that other people think about you, beyond what you've done in your past. That's really the way that you can feel like you have agency over who you are.
Yeah.
um that's what I would say.
And then like ironically, the more you accept that like life just kind of sucks and is full of suffering, like the more enjoyable it becomes. When you're fixated on like it can be fixed, it's fucking miserable. Versus now I'm like, it's Monday. I am in the great struggle to make it to Thursday, where I'm allowed a Reese's cup. And it's like, this is my D-Day. I'm storming the beaches of like, I just got Monday. It's what I got, 24:48. I got 72 hours until until I'm in the fields of heaven. What happens then? Well, then it will pass and I got to do the next week. Like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's all kind of dog shit. And I don't know, kind of enjoying it. And it's just what it is. And honestly, like, there's just a realism. I don't think it's like defeatism. I think it's a realism of just accepting like, yeah, like that's kind of it. Like that's and it's not painful. I just accept it for what it is, and it's okay not knowing why there's pain and why life is suffering. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe enlightenment really is like the one way you can pierce the veil and be free of all pain. And so I have no idea. And maybe the point of all of this just inescapable suffering is what maybe that's what heaven is like you wake up from like the bad dream. Who knows? Maybe this is all there's nothing like waking up from a bad dream and you go, oh fuck. Oh my God, I'm in my bed. Oh my, like you don't care about like dishes and rent and you're like, like this is great. I wasn't just eaten by a dragon or something. Maybe that's what this life is to experience suffering so that you can then bask in the hot tub of not suffering. I don't fucking know. Um, yeah, I mean, I have no idea.
Poetic.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
No,
Not
I
that
agree with you.
not that it applies here, but we can wrap it up with a great quote from you. And it's luckily when I was a kid I had cancer. Which to me is still when I've told you this is like one of the best standalone quotes ever. Doesn't what does that have to do with this conversation? Don't worry about it. Just have a chuckle at that. Luckily when I was a kid I had cancer. Like just take that. Like that's out there. That's in the universe. What do you do with it? I have no fucking idea. It's a fortune cookie. Go fuck yourself. I don't know. But, luckily when I was a kid, I had cancer.
There you
So,
go.
it's like, how does that help
Your
me? It
your
doesn't.
viewers are going to be so confused. You're not
Good.
going to give them any explanation.
Good. What's in your comedy routine? Send me the comedy
It
routine
is.
again. I'll link it. I'll put it in there.
Oh, the
Um,
comedy routine isn't up on YouTube. But yeah, I can. Here, can I just
You
explain?
just set me up for total failure. You said, "Are you not going to give them context?" And I said, Let me link it." There is no link. Like,
I'm
what is
sorry.
this? The life is suffering. Life is suffering. Yeah, no, give them context.
Okay. I did a stand-up comedy routine that I sent to Tommy, and I told a story about how like my cousin and I used to play pranks on each other, and one time I my prank failed and it went on my grandma. And then I said, luckily for me, I had cancer as a kid, so I didn't get in trouble. That was the punchline. So
Yeah, you're like, yeah, I think this
yeah.
one kid was just like flying down like the hospital hallway in like a wheelchair with like an IV bag, and everyone was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, is he okay?" And you're like, "That kid was a terrorist, but he
Right,
had
right.
cancer, so it was just carte blanche." Like, hey, don't worry about it. It's yeah,
Like,
I don't know.
what an inspiration.
It is. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that in like like the bullshit motivational posters of like a mountain and just says like soar like an eagle today. I'm just gonna have that. It's just gonna be like I don't know, like a Greek god on top of a mountain and just says, "Luckily, I had cancer as a kid."
Right,
People like,
exactly.
"What is that?" And I'll be like, "It's why I get up every day." What's wrong with you? Um, well, yeah. So just like the kind of end of this show made no sense. Neither does life. So deal with it. Go into the description and grab her book, Screens in the Ego. It's on Audible. It's a fantastic book. And again, I wouldn't have her back on if I didn't enjoy her, and I also wouldn't plug your book if I didn't enjoy it. So guys, please go grab the book. Give her a couple shekels. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, Tommy.
Thanks for
Talk
being
to you
here.
soon.
Thanks for your time. Guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless everybody. Much love.